Utskitsi, the largest power station ever built, cost about $28 billion. For the biggest machine on Earth, that's almost a bargain. But that price tag is a magic trick, because the most expensive thing about the Three Gorges Dam was never the dam. So what did it really cost to hold back a river? Start with what you can see. The Three Gorges Dam spans the Yangtze River in central China, a wall of concrete more than 2 kilometers long and over 180 meters high. Inside sit 2 giant turbines. Together they make 2,500 megawatts, the most installed capacity of any power station on the planet. It pours out enough electricity in a year to light up tens of millions of homes. By every engineering measure, it works. The build came in around $28 billion. So why isn't that the end of the story? Because to put a wall here, China didn't just have to build something. It had to move something, and the things it moved don't show up on a construction invoice. Way first, the part you'd expect, the structure itself. This is a concrete gravity dam. It holds the river back simply by being too heavy to move. To do that took roughly 27 million cubic meters of concrete, enough to build a small mountain range of gray. Then the navigation works, a 5-step staircase of ship locks, and a ship lift that hoists 3,000-ton boats vertically like an elevator. One of the most complex pieces of marine engineering ever attempted. And the machine's 32 main turbines, each one 700 megawatts, plus the transformers, the spillway gates, the grid connections to send the power 1,000 kilometers east. Add it together, and the official construction bill lands around $28 billion. Remember that number, because everything from here is the cost that isn't in it. To raise the water behind the dam, the valley had to be emptied. Not of trees, of people. The rising reservoir drowned 13 cities, 140 towns, and around 1,300 villages. 600 square kilometers of land, farms, homes, whole communities, went under the water for good. And so somewhere around 1.4 million people were moved. Relocated by design, so the river could rise over the place they'd lived. The official resettlement budget ran about $6.4 billion. Relocation, compensation, new housing. But here's the part that doesn't fit in a spreadsheet. More than 1,200 archaeological and historical sites, some thousands of years old, sat in that valley. Some were moved, stone by stone, to higher ground. Most were simply lost beneath the reservoir. That's a cost with a real number attached, and a cost that no number can ever fully capture. And then there's the cost nobody planned for, the one the landscape itself sends back, year after year. When you fill a reservoir this size, the water doesn't just sit there. It pushes. It soaks into the valley walls. And every year, as the level rises and falls by tens of meters, it works the slopes loose. Along the new shoreline, geologists documented a wave of landslides and bank collapses, slopes that had stood for centuries, destabilized by the weight and the cycle of the water. China has spent billions more since. Stabilizing banks, building landslide warning systems, dredging the silt the dam now traps, and quietly moving more people. The so-called geological migrants, off ground that was no longer safe, now sit with the scale of what's holding all this up. The reservoir holds something like 42 billion tons of water. And here is where this stops being a story about China at all. and becomes a story about the planet. NASA scientists worked out that lifting that much water this high actually changes how the Earth spins. It nudges the planet's balance just enough to lengthen the day by about 6/100ths of a millionth of a second. It is a tiny number. You will never feel it. But think about what it means. We built something so heavy that the Earth's own clock had to adjust. There are only a handful of human structures massive enough to register on the spin of the planet, and this is the heaviest of them. Yes. So, let's answer the real question. What did the Three Gorges Dam actually cost? Not $28 billion. That was only the concrete and the turbines. The part that was, honestly, the easy part. Add the 1.4 million people moved. Add the $6.5 billion to resettle them. Add the billions more, still being spent, to hold the loosening slopes in place. And the honest, all in cost climbs to somewhere around $37 billion. $37 billion, and a footprint measured not just in money, but in a relocated city, a drowned valley, and a measurable mark on the rotation of the Earth itself. Let's make that human. 1.4 million people. That's an entire major city. Picture everyone in Dallas, or Munich, or the whole population of Estonia, packing up and being moved so the water could rise. Not over a generation, for one dam. The money, around $37 billion all in, is more, in nominal dollars, than it cost to land a human being on the moon. And the weight of the water it holds back is, to this day, the clearest example we have of a single human project heavy enough to touch the planet's clock. The Three Gorges Dam does its job. It makes clean power for tens of millions. The engineering, by the numbers, worked. But the price was never really the concrete. The real cost was a city's worth of people, a valley's worth of history, and slopes that are still being paid for today, all of it, hidden under a smooth sheet of water that looks, from above, like it was always there. That's what we do here. We find the bill that isn't on the receipt. For the things you thought you already understood. Next time. The real cost of putting one rocket into space, and why most of the money burns up before it ever leaves the ground.